Today's class is probably the final class in this series. And again, to remind everyone, we are in the middle of studying an in-depth, rather lengthy essay of Rabbi Mendel Kasher, the author of a series of books called Torah Sheleimah. And this is in volume 17, which is in Parshas Mishpatim. That's Shmois, the book of Exodus, chapter 21. And in the Miluyim, that would be the supplements to volume 17, we are now on page 222 in the bottom of the left-hand column. The discussion over here, again, just to review once again, as we do at the beginning of most of these classes, just very, very briefly. The topic over here is the seventh mitzvah, if you will, of the seven mitzvahs b'nei Noach. The mitzvah of dinim, of seeing to it to appoint a court system that is going to judge and rule, and when necessary, punish the b'nei Noach, the world at large, for transgressing or for failing to keep their mitzvahs. So they have 6 mitzvahs, 6 commandments that they have to keep. And then they have law and order. Make sure they keep them. The question that this essay is dealing with, and that the last class we already came to a conclusion, and now he's working on bringing support and proof to it. The question initially was, there are 2 approaches. One is that dinim means civil laws, and as long as it's not one of the 6, so then the Bnei Noach, the world at large, is supposed to keep the mitzvahs that the Jews have, primarily found in the section of Mishpatim in the book of Shmois. So all of those laws between one man and his fellow man, between a person and his neighbor, all the laws of business and contracts and the give and take and damages, anything related to those types of civil laws, there's no reason that they shouldn't keep the laws the same way that the Jews are. And if those laws were given by God to the Jewish people, well, if they're good enough for the Jewish people, and we're not talking about rituals between man and God, we're talking about man and man. So then, if this is the perfect divine code of law, so then it should apply to everybody. That's one approach. And the other approach is, nope, that's for the Jews. And when it comes to the Gentiles, to the non-Jewish world, they are to make up moral laws, and they have a set of moral laws which are logical, and they make sense. And therefore, they can change from time to time and from country to country, because you go by the needs of the people at the time. You go by the necessity, and therefore we said that if a person lives in one time, this may be forbidden, but in a different place it may be permitted. And actually, one of the examples that we gave in one of the classes, not in the previous class, but one of the earlier classes when we were doing this essay, one of the examples we gave, and there's countless examples you can give, but again, it can't infringe on any of the 6. So, for example, you can't have a law that says that it would be permitted to do a certain type of murder. You can kill if the guy's really annoying. If the person's extremely annoying, well, then you can kill the person. No, can't do that, because one of the 6 laws is no, you can't kill. Or you can't say, and this shouldn't be controversial, the example I'm going to give now is really not controversial, but unfortunately in the United States, that we're, situation today, it is controversial. And that is the law of abortion. Without going into all the details, let's just, for argument's sake, assume that it is a later stage of pregnancy, not in the very early stage, so that we can keep it clear. And there cannot be any state that is going to allow abortion. Again, if it's endangering the mother, I'm not getting into details, but as a rule, as a general rule, abortion needs to be outlawed because it's one of the 6. Because according to the 7 mitzvahs for the Bnei Noach, the prohibition of murder includes abortion. However, something else, it does not touch upon belief in one God, or, God forbid, blasphemy, or stealing, or murder, or adultery, or Eiver min achai, eating food improperly, that it was removed from the animal before the animal was dead. As long as it doesn't touch upon any of those, so then it's up to each individual country. And there are certain countries which allow certain things, and then there are other countries which don't allow it. So that would mean that in the country that allows it, it's permissible. And in the country that doesn't, so then it's not allowed by Torah law, even though it's man-made. And the example that we gave then was, for example, we said that in certain countries it is legal to smoke different types of things, not just tobacco, but be it marijuana or any of whatever the different things are. So in certain countries, it is absolutely legal. That means that in those countries, it's permitted by Torah law for the non-Jewish people to take those substances, to whatever they do, to smoke it or however they take it. But then in a country where it's banned, even though one can make the argument and say that there's no good reason to ban it, that's irrelevant. Once the governing body of that country decides that it's not allowed, even though it doesn't infringe on any of the 6 commandments, it is forbidden because this is the law of the land and they don't allow it. And I guess the same thing would apply from state to state, like within the United States. Like in Colorado, right, it's legal. So therefore, in Colorado, there wouldn't be any problem for a Noachide to have any of those substances. But in the state of Illinois, some people would say unfortunately, but it's not allowed. It's illegal. So therefore, for a Ben Noach, it would not be allowed. Rabbi Kasher's conclusion was pretty clear that we take the latter approach. And that is that dinim, laws for Bnei Noach, are according to the common moral decisions of the governing body at the time. And the last thing that we did on page 222 was he brought some historical points where he showed how we see the Torah law goes way back, even prior to the giving of Torah at Sinai, and some people would think, oh, that's a problem, and that challenges the authenticity of the Torah. And he says, no, on the contrary, there's no problem. If anything, that supports the point, and that is that God gave laws, 6 commandments to Adam, the first man, and then after the flood, reiterated those 6 and gave the 7th of Eiver min achai, limb off of a live animal, to Noach. So now all of mankind back then already had these laws. So if they literally etched it in stone, that's wonderful. And the fact that the language is so similar to the commandments as they're given at Sinai for the Jewish people, that just shows it's from the same God. That's wonderful. That's fine. Okay. That's very brief overview of where we're at. So again, we're on page 222 at the bottom of the left-hand column. Would it be easier if you guys all joined the crowd over there and sat on that side? That way I can get a better view of everybody. Okay, now Rabbi Kasher is going to go into a particular one of the 6 laws, and that is, we're going to focus now on Geneva. That would be the prohibition of stealing, or robbing, or theft. Ula dugma, and for example, avikan halacha achas b'dina Geneva. I'm going to bring now one example in the laws of stealing to prove his point, how dinim works for Bnei Noach. Aleph, firstly, A. B'chukei Hamorfi, Siman Ches Kasuv. In these laws of Hamorfi that he brought down last time, which was a Babylonian king. So over there in section 8, it says as follows. And this is what's so amazing, because this is almost word for word what it says in the Torah, in the Parsha of Mishpatim. And we quote, Ki yignoiv ish shor oiseh oy chamoir oy chazir oy oniya. Okay? Sounds like it's a pasuk. It's not. If a man were to steal an ox or a sheep or a donkey or a pig or a ship, im leilokim oy lahechalhu, if for God or for the sanctuary it is, shloishim yitain, 30 he shall give. V'im la'niyei ha'ir, who, and if it's for the poor people of the city, yishalem asara, he shall pay 10. V'im ein biyad aganav l'shalem, and if the thief doesn't have in his hands to pay, he has no money to be able to pay up with, umeis bignei vasoi, and he shall die for his theft. Atkan, up here is a quote. So it's very interesting. That's kind of similar, but that's sort of different. Beis, B. B'chukei Ashur luach shishi siman hey. So another one of the earlier codes of law that were found, that the archaeologists found, was the laws of Assyria. And here on the 6th part in chapter 5, and we quote, and if a man were to steal a beast or anything, ya'idu boy, they shall testify that in fact the person stole it, and they will prove against him that he in fact did it. Kikri ozcha, a certain measurement of oiferes, yitain, he shall give. So it's a payment, how much he's supposed to give. Chamishim bashevet yakuhu, 50 lashes with a staff, they shall beat him. Okay? He's getting lashes. Now 39, it says over here in this Assyrian law, he shall be beaten 50. Avoidas hamelech ya'avoid, he shall work for the king. Es dinoi, his ruling, the penalty, the verdict. His verdict, psak dino yichtavu adayonim, meaning the verdict of the judgment, the judges shall write down. V'chi sasig, and if he will be able to afford, yadoy, meaning if his hand will be able to afford, esagneva, that which he stole, ganav, the thievery that he stole, yishalim, he shall pay. Imat imravu, whether it's a little bit or whether it's a larger amount, a great deal, yashiv, he needs to return that which he stole. V'gama melech oinesh kilvava yashis alav, and also the king will place upon him a punishment as his heart desires, as he will see fit. Atkan, up here is the quote from that one. Gimel, C. B'chukei hachitim, another one that we brought down last time was some ancient set of laws that they found, and over there we're giving another example from there. Siman Nun Zayin, chapter 57. Ki yignev ish bakar gadoil, if a man will steal a large cattle, gas, meaning he's stealing a big animal, such as an ox or a bull. Ima bakar ben chatzi shana, if this animal is half a year old, einenu bakar gadoil, that does not constitute as a large animal. if he's only half a year old. Ima bakar ben shana, einenu bakar gadol. If this cattle is a year old, then he's not a large one. Im ben shnasayim hu zeu bakar gadol. If he's 2 years old, that constituted as a large one. Okay? So half a year is too small, a year is too small, he needs to be 2 years old. Lifnim nosan ba'adoi shloishim bakar. Beforehand, he would have had to pay for it 30 animals. Ata, now, unoisin rak chamisha asar bakar, he only gives 15, half the amount. Chamisha b'nei shnasayim, 5 for 2-year-olds. Chamisha b'nei shana achas, and 5 for 1-year-old. Chamisha b'nei chatzi shana, and 5 for half a year old. Vesbeis mishka yitene rovan, and he has to give a security, collateral. Siman Samach Dalet in chapter 64. Ki yignoiv ish seh ben choyrin mi beis reyehu. If someone was to steal a sheep of a free person from the house of his friend, it's someone else's sheep that he's stealing. Olav laseis maloit murasoi. So he has to give the full exchange. Milvad zeh, besides for this, hayalifnim alaganav laseis mona kesef. The thief should have given a 100 silver echad. Ata olav l'shalim. Now he has to pay rak shneim asar shekel kesef. Now he only has to pay 12 measures of silver. Him harbe ganav, if he stole many, matilim olav harbe, then he has to pay much. Imat ganav, matilim olav mat. And if he stole a little bit, then you make him pay a little bit. In other words, according to what he stole, that's how much he's got to pay. Atkan, up to here is that quote. B'chukei achitim, in these laws of the chitim that we've now quoted, yeshnam asreis chukim bifratim shoinim. There are many, tens of laws in detail, various different details, binyan gneva, when it comes to laws of stealing, b'siman kuf aleph, in chapter 101. Yesh mikrim, there are cases, shemilvado inesh kesef, that in addition, besides having to pay money, b'chanis hikuhu, they would hit the person with a spear. Uv'siman kuf chavav, and in chapter 126, v'ish ki yignoiv roimach nechoishes b'shar ha'echal mois yumas. And if a man were to steal a spear of copper by the gate of the sanctuary, he shall be put to death. Uvesimin memtes, and in chapter 49, v'ish chafrash ki yignev chulu, v'imlo yeshivo es agneva chulu, v'shamu oisoi bakele hamelech. Another case where if a person stole, they should put him in jail, in the king's prison. So we see in all of these ancient, pre-Matan Torah, laws of these various different nations, laws, detailed laws, very specific laws about stealing. So says Rabbi Kasher, Mikol Hanal, from all of the above examples, which we just listed a whole bunch of different things, and it sounded a little bit cryptic, we're just quoting their laws. Roim anu, we see, shayulem oinshim shoinim al gneva, that they had various different penalties, different punishments for stealing. Misa, there's the death. Makois, to give lashes. Oinish tashlumin kefel, to pay double the amount financially, to pay twice the amount of the value of that which they stole. Shlosh to pay 3 times the amount. Shiva sayim, 7 times the amount. Asar tayim, 20 times the amount. 10 times the amount. Shtei mesrei, 12 times the amount. Tesvav, 15 times the amount. Ad shloishim pa'am, till we found the most 30 times the amount. You have to pay 30 times. And there was also a penalty of throwing the person in prison for stealing. It's all dependent on the laws, the rules instituted, made up by the king. King of the time had to figure it out. And he decided, in this case you pay this amount, this case, this amount, this case you kill the guy, this case you throw him in jail. We don't find that in the Torah for Bnei Noach. So here he's proving that they had laws, and they're not just man-made laws. These are laws that were man-made, but they have the authority of being divine. They're God-given. And that's how dinim would work. The people have to keep the laws that were made up at the time.
How is that? I mean, today we could look at different countries and see that there's different ways of handling the laws of theft.
Right.
So we can see that as examples, but how do we go from seeing it as examples to saying that means that it's proper for each country to have their own laws of theft?
Well, first of all, theft is one of the six. Mm-hmm. So really, they're not supposed to make up too much of it. And just like any of the other mitzvahs b'nei Noach, it is a capital offense. So a ben Noach that steals, as the Rambam rules, is to be put to death. But he's just showing us how there existed various different laws that were made up by kings.
And that would be considered proper and would be considered Torah for that country?
Prior to the giving of the Torah, yes. He's just giving examples of going all the way back then. Once the Torah was given, now as we said, it can't infringe on the six, and stealing is one of the six. Mm-hmm. Now, there's an interesting footnote over here. Footnote 5 from Rabbi Kasher. And he says as follows. Want to pass me the Tanakh? Thank you. He says as follows. The Sefer Klimas HaGoyim, Lebal Mai Sefer. Okay, there's a certain book written by a great Jewish scholar, and he says as follows. Perek Tes Siman Beis Kosav. He writes as follows. V'shom Nemar, Ki Haroim Moyim Tolu Shnei Ganovim. The Romans had hanged or hung?
Hung.
I think people are hanged. So they hanged two thieves. L'kayem Hashenemar, to fulfill that which the verse states, and it's quoting from Yeshaya Nun Gimel, Isaiah 53. Va'itein es Rishoyim Kivroi. Yeshaya 53, verse 12. Unless it's a typo again. You want to pass the Concordancia all the way to the bottom? Should be down there. See it all the way down? Bottom shelf?
Is it missing the spine?
Yes. No. Big, thick, fat, heavy book.
What's it called?
It's a
Concordance?
Yes.
No, I don't know.
No. Huge, big, fat, heavy
Huge.
book.
Come on, Simcha. Where's it at?
What is it?
We're looking for a concordance.
And I don't know what it looks like. Is this not over here, is it?
Oh, there. That's it.
Thank you. All right.
I'm being a historian. Go to my Facebook, you'll see pictures. I got a bunch of lights.
Where does Isaiah talk about hanging on a tree?
Nun Gimel Tes. 53:9.
Oh,
Close enough. 53:12. It's 53:9.
Was that another joke question?
Okay. Here's what it says. Isaiah 53. All right? And that should be pretty well known for many people. This is the real stuff, though. The real prophet, speaking about the real Messiah. And the verse reads as follows. Vayitein es reshoim kivroi ves asher b'moisav a'loi chamas asav v'loi mirma b'fiv. And the English reads as follows. He submitted himself to his grave like wicked men, and the wealthy submitted to his executions for committing no crime and with no deceit in his mouth. So, somehow, when the Romans hanged two thieves, it was somehow supposed to be fulfilling what this verse says. The Yikshe, but the question is, the Yikshe lahem, ki Yisrael lo hayom emisim ala gneva. There's a problem because the Jewish people don't kill for thievery. It's not a capital offense for Jews. Vein makom loymar ki goyin vein nefashos mi Yisrael hayu. And you can't say that those two people that were killed by the Romans were actual kidnappers. Because remember, there is a form of stealing that Jews do get killed for, that it is a capital offense. And that's if you steal a person, kidnapping. And when it says in the Haseres HaDibros, in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not steal, that is an incorrect translation. Everyone translates it as thou shalt not steal. If I understand the English well enough, that is an incorrect translation, unless I don't know English well enough. Can steal without explaining refer to kidnapping, or does steal by definition mean property? If it could mean people, okay, then it's fine. But if stealing can't be called kidnapping, if kidnapping is the term used for stealing people, then you can't say thou shalt not steal because it's a separate prohibition. It's not in the Ten Commandments, and the Ten Commandments is talking about a capital offense, and it's talking about kidnapping. So you can't say that these two people that were hanged were people that kidnapped Jews. Ubava Metzia, Pei Gimel, in Bava Metzia, in the Talmud, 83b. Mivuar, it is explained, Shabizmanam, that in their days, Hamalchus Gam Kinoagalari Ganovim. The government then, in the times of the Talmud, would kill for people that were stealing. It was the penalty for stealing was killing. Shalach Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha sent Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon Shayatoifis Ganovim U'Maisim Al Malchus. See, he used to catch thieves and he used to give them over to the government. If someone was stealing, he'd hand them over to the government, and then the government would deal with them quite harshly. The government would kill them. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha sent to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, Ad Mosai, until when? Until when will you continue to be giving over people to be killed? Sholach lei, so he sent back to him, I am getting rid of the thorns from the vineyard. I'm cleaning up the act over here. Sholach lei, so he sends back to him, let the master of the vineyard, in other words, Hashem, God himself, let him come and take care of his vineyard. Don't play the role of taking thieves and giving them over to the government so the government should execute them. Don't do that. V'habarbanel chaf beis beis. The Abarbanel, which is one of the great Rishonim, he writes as follows. Umois ha'olam, the nations of the world, the non-Jewish nations, be'artsoisam legoyehem, in their lands, in their nations, all the various different nations of the world. Mayhem from amongst them. Hinichu b'nimuseihem, they left it that in their laws, in their common practice, sheyargu, that they should kill, execute. V'yitlu al eitz, and they will hang on a tree, on the gallows. Esaganov shor oiseh oishar metaltin, someone who steals an ox, or a sheep, or any other object. Umehem, in some of these nations, some of the goyim, hinichu, what they have allowed, sheichresu oznav bepam rishona, that they will cut off his ear of the thief for the first offense. Uvashenis yumas, second offense, they kill him. Ever heard of that? First time a person steals, chop off his ear. Second time, he's dead. And then there are those that are lenient, and they only make the thief pay 7 times the amount of what he stole. He stole 1 sheep, you have to pay back 7. Perhaps they took this from the words of the wisest of all men, of King Solomon. Shenemar, for Shlomo Melech says, in Mishlei Vav Lamed Aleph, if it's not a typo, in Proverbs 6, chapter 6, verse 31. What does it say over there? So it's a parable. King Solomon is speaking over there. And perhaps based on that is where some of these nations took the idea of paying 7 times the amount. Because in Torah law we never find 7. We find double, we find 4, and we find 5 and half. So there's nothing, you're totally free. Sometimes you pay 50%. Well, that's really for damages, not for stealing. Sometimes you pay 100%, just the principal. Sometimes double, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. We don't find 7 times. Where'd they get 7? So maybe they took it from the words of Shlomo, where he says, in Mishlei, Vav Lamed Aleph, V'nimtza Yishalim Shivasoyim, as Kol Hoin Beisa Yitain. So verse 30 says like this: a thief is not overly scorned if he steals to satisfy his soul when he is hungry. Guy's hungry. Verse 31 continues, when he is found, he would even pay 7-fold, even give all the wealth of his house. So maybe because Shlomo Melech says that, 7-fold, Shiva Sayim. That's where they got the idea that he should pay 7 times. V'nimtza she'yishalim Shiva Sayim chulu. Aval hu loy diber shomei yoinshim chulu. But Shlomo Melech is not speaking about a law of how to punish or how to penalize a person. Ayin Sham Heitev, take a look there, and you'll see it very clearly. All right, let us proceed. We're again on page 223, in the middle of the right-hand column. The heading of this is Dine Gneva B'Torah Kodim Sinai, laws of stealing prior to the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. Okay, so let's see, what is the Torah law prior to the revelation at Sinai? V'hine, B'Torah Lifnei Matan Torah, in the Torah, prior to the giving of the Torah at Sinai, Matzinu, we find, Be'inyan Zeh, in this concept that we're talking about, the Parshas Bereishis, Perek Memdalid Tes, in the book of Genesis, chapter 44. What do we find? As follows. Asher yimotze itoi me'avodecha, with whomever of your servants it will be found in his hands, vames, and he shall be put to death. V'gam anachnu niyeh la'adoini la'avodim, and we too will be for our master slaves. If you recall, that is talking about in the episode of Yosef and his brothers, when he accuses them of being spies, and the whole story of them coming to, there was a famine in the land and they wanted food, and this is after they sold, many years after they sold their brother Yosef. So Yosef had a whole plan over here, and he had his goblet put into the sack of one of his brothers, sack of food. And after they left Egypt to go back home to the land of Canaan, he sent after them to go stop them and to accuse them of being thieves and that they stole the goblet. So when they were confronted and they were totally innocent and it was planted, they did not know, they did not take anything. So when they were confronted and they said, why and how could you dare take the goblet which the vice, Yosef HaTzadik, sees the future in that goblet. He can look into that goblet and he has all sorts of powers. You thought you'd get away with stealing that goblet? The silver goblet? So then, what they tell him, they tell this messenger that we're innocent, no one has it, search our bags, and then they say, with whomever you find having the goblet will be put to death. And all the rest of us, the accomplices, we will be slaves for your master, for Yosef. Uve Torah Sheleimah sham, ois chaf beis, and in my book, the Torah Sheleimah, back over there in Bereshis, in footnote 22, I bring down Mi Bereshis Rabbah, from the Medrash Rabbah on Bereshis, the Figuras Astzur Hamor, according to the version of a specific reading of the Bereshis, of the Medrash. Omar Ravuna Chulu. Ravuna said, Omar Lahem, he said to them, Yafe Amartem, very good. Your statement, your judgment is correct. V'kachu hadin, and this in fact is the law. Asara b'nei Adam, 10 people. Shenimtza bechad me'an hagneva, that with one of this, a group of 10 people, that in the possession of one of them, the stolen item was found. Hu neherag, the one with whom the stolen item was found, he will be put to death. V'hashar noisnim besira, beis hasoyar, and all the rest, the other 9, are to be put in jail. So you're right, that is the law. Urei bar Ramban, and then he tells us to look up in the Ramban, Nachmanides. So we already find the concept of someone being put to death for stealing, and that the accomplices are thrown into jail. Val ha'inyan shel misa, and with regards to this idea of killing the person, mefarish b'seichel toiv b'Torah Sheleimah shamois chaf aleph. So he brings down in the Torah Sheleimah, shekein hadin, that this in fact is the law. Sharei, for behold, ben noyach nerag al shavet pruta. A ben noyach is to be put to death for stealing something which is the value of the smallest coin, a pruta. Very, very small amount. If a ben noyach steals that amount, his penalty is death.
Why the ben noach is different?
All of the mitzvahs for ben noyach, the penalty is death, basically, for all of them. And the question is, why? When it comes to Jews, sometimes it's payment, sometimes it's lashes. There's different forms of penalty. By bnei noyach, for those 7, the penalty is always, as a general rule, death. Uviksav yad medrash hachefetz, and in a manuscript of a certain medrash, it says, Vameis, that on the word in the verse where they said, whoever you find the goblet shall be put to death. Ben noyach shegaz aloi gonav, a ben noyach that stole or robbed, chayav misa besayif, is liable to be put to death by sword. In other words, he should be beheaded. Called decapitated. Ubi Yisrael Namar, and when it comes to the Jewish people, what does it say? What does Torah say for a Jew who steals? V'nimkar b'gnei vasoi, he shall be sold for stealing. Kach Omar Yosef, this is what Yosef said. Hu yeli aved, he shall be for me for a slave. Atkan. In other words, Yosef was saying, I'm going to be lenient, and I'm going to rule according to the Jewish law, according to the Torah for the Jews. And the guy who stole shall become my slave. That's the Jewish law, that a thief becomes the slave of the person he stole from if he can't pay. You're right. Really, the person who stole it should be put to death. But I am going to be Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm going to follow Torah law for Jewish people, and I'm going to make him my slave. Uvechizkuni, and in another commentary, the Chizkuni, he says as follows. This, in fact, was the law for them prior to the giving of the Torah at Sinai, as it says in Bereshis, chapter 43. When the brothers were speaking between themselves, so when they saw what's happening over there, and they were being accused, so they were getting worried, and they say to each other that they're going to take us as slaves and our donkeys. So in other words, if a person in fact is a thief, he would be taken as a slave. Once a Torah was given, Yishalim kefil, you pay double for stealing. If you don't have the money, then the person is sold for what he stole. Atkan. That's the Chaskuni. And in Bereshis Rabasi it says as follows. Mimi lamdu. From whom did they learn this? Mi Yaakov Aviyim, from their father Yaakov. She'amar, for he said, we're going back to bring the source. Where do the brothers know all of this? Where'd they get these laws from? About slave and kill the guy who you found it with. They are going back from their father Yaakov. He said this to Lavan. When his uncle / father-in-law, the crooked, conniving Lavan, when he came after Yaakov had escaped with his wives and family, Lavan's daughters and grandchildren, and Lavan pursues him, and one of Lavan's daughters, Yaakov's wife Rachel, stole the idols, referred to in the verse as the terafim, of her father. And Yaakov was unaware of this. And Lavan comes and he says, look, you took my daughters as captives, you took my grandchildren, you ran away, but I think you overdid it when you stole my idols. And Yaakov said, what an accusation. And then, not knowing that someone did take the idols, Yaakov then says to Lavan, search, and with whomever you find the stolen goods, namely your idols, will not live. Bereshis Lamed Aleph Lamed Beis, chapter 31, verse 32. Av Haim Amru, so that's where they learned it from. So they too said later on, in their case, with whomever will be found from your servants, Vames will be put to death. And we too will become your slaves, that we are suspected that it was with our consent that he stole it. Atkan. And in the commentary of the Torah over there, he says as follows. It is befitting to hang him like a thief. And his hand, presumably the hand of the one whom it was stolen from, should be the first one to put him to death. And when it comes to the rule of paying double, so it explains in these different commentaries, the Yaakov said to his children, when they came back and they found that they had all this money stuffed in their bags, and they said, what's going on? We didn't steal it, we didn't take it, but instead of just taking the food that they paid for, when they came back from one of the trips, They found extra money. What does Yaakov tell them? Take all the money back, kesef mishneh, and an identical amount, double, 200%, double the amount of what you found, bring back to the man. Why did he say that? Amar lem Yaakov avim. In essence, what Yaakov, their father, was telling them, Im yodin eschem ganovim, if he will, in fact, judge you as thieves, Imru loi, tell him, Anachnu noisim kedin Torah. We are following Torah law. Torah wasn't given yet, but we're going to go by the Torah law. Im yimotzi agane b'shalom shnayim. And the Torah is going to say, in Parshas Mishpatim, that if the thief is caught, if he's found, he shall pay double. So here we are. You caught us as thieves. If that's really what happened, we're paying now in double. That's why Yaakov gave them double the amount to pay back. Move of Torah Sheleimah, Bereshis Perek Mem Daled Nun Gimel. It's brought down furthermore in Torah Sheleimah, in chapter 44 of Bereshis. She Yehuda Amar li Yosef. Yehuda says to Yosef, Ein ata danenu. You're not judging us, loy bedine malchus, loy bedine shamayim, not according to the law of a king, of a governing body, and not according to the law of heaven. In other words, what are you doing? This is what Yehuda is telling Yosef. Bedine shamayim, according to the laws of heaven, mish nimtza goynev, mishalim kiflaim v'goymer. Whoever is found as a thief has to pay double. V'im ein loy mal l'shalim, and if he doesn't have money to pay, he can't afford it, he doesn't have the money, nimkar b'gnei vasei. He is sold as a slave to the person he stole from. You're not doing that. Bedine malchus, noitin kol ma sheyesh loy. And according to the laws of malchus, of the government, you take everything that the guy has. U'bebereshis Rabbah, and the Medrash says, B'nimusais shalonu ksiv v'im ein loy v'nimkar b'gnei vasoi, that in our nimusim, in our laws, what does it say? That if he doesn't have enough money, he's sold as a slave. U'v'medrash Bereshis Rabbah Amud 176. Okay, another Medrash states as follows. Mikan, from here, Atalamed, you learn, Evrasan shel Shvatim, what the actual crime of the tribes, of the brothers, what it was. Shemachru Yosef achehim, that they sold their brother Yosef. Kama rois asu boilam, how many bad things did they do in the world? V'im toimar, and if you're going to ask, Lama nenshu ashvatim, why were the tribes punished? Shadayin lenitna Torah. The Torah wasn't given yet. They didn't yet accept this law that the Torah is going to say that if someone kidnaps, that's a terrible offense, it's a capital offense. They kidnapped their brother. But the Torah wasn't given yet. Loi tivra sharei zayin mitzvahs nitztavu b'nei noyach. Said, no, that's not a question. Don't try to justify them, because the Bnei Noach were commanded 7 laws. V'gezel echad mehen, and stealing is one of the 7. V'im gazlu ben ohuv laviv, and they stole a beloved son from his father. That's stealing. Kidnapping is stealing. They did it. V'gezel b'chlal gnevahi. It's all part of stealing. El shechamur gneva min hagezel, al shemisyar min ha'eved yoysim min ha'adain. There's Gezela and there's Geneva. Gezela means by force, like in the case of Yosef. And Geneva means secretly, when you break in at night and no one should see. Okay? So in a sense, Geneva is worse than Gezel, because you're afraid of the servant more than the master. No, you're not afraid of Hashem, but you are afraid of other people. Uvnei noyach chayavin misa aloisan hamitzvos im over lachas mehen afilu b'loy hasara v'chulu. And bnei noyach are liable to be put to death for all of those commandments if they transgressed any of them, even without a warning. A Jew is not put to death unless he is warned. Bnei Noach don't need a warning. If a Ben Noach transgresses even without having a warning, he is put to death.
So you're saying they have to do it once and they warn them and then they put them to death?
No, they don't have to be warned.
He's saying that they don't have to.
No, the Jews I'm talking about.
Oh, for a Jew?
Oh, yeah.
No, if you see he's about to do it,
Uh-huh.
so you have to warn him with 2 witnesses, and then, depending on what the sin is, what the crime
That's
is.
the only way that he can be put to death.
Right. The only way a Jew can be put to death for any capital offense for a Jew, 2 witnesses and a warning. And he has to respond to the warning. It's got to be a full, proper warning. Anything.
Okay.
Even idolatry. If a Jew was witnessed by 2 people committing idolatry, he won't be put to death if there was no warning.
And
But a Ben Noach doesn't have to have any warning.
Huh.
Dover Acher, Lamon is Chayv Shvatim. Another explanation. Why were these brothers considered liable? What did they do wrong? Not because of Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, not because stealing is one of the Noachite commandments. Because their great-grandfather, Avraham, kept the entire Torah that wasn't yet given, the 613, the Jewish law. And since the Torah was traditionally given to them from Avraham, he transmitted it and taught it and gave it to Yitzchak, who kept it all, and he gave it in turn to Yaakov, their father. And the Torah was transmitted to learn and to keep, to observe. Lekach, therefore, when they transgressed this one mitzvah of kidnapping, they stole a person and they sold him, it's considered a big sin. So either way you look at it, the Medrash is trying to decide what's wrong with what they did. How are they supposed to know that you can't kidnap? Torah wasn't given yet. So the Medrash gives two explanations.
It's not only issue with kidnapping, you're saying what brothers did to Yosef? Or
Yeah. How the brothers
sold
kidnapped?
him to another nation.
That's the full. In order for it to be a death penalty for kidnapping, you have to actually sell him too. You have to kidnap him and then sell him. Just for kidnapping alone, it's not a capital offense. So for a Jew to be liable for that, one of the 10 commandments, it says, no kidnapping. It means kidnapping and selling. But the Torah wasn't given yet. So we have 2 answers to that. 1, it's a form of stealing. B'nei Noach. 2, they kept the whole Torah, and therefore they transgressed.
Bnei Noach keeps the whole Torah?
No, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and the sons of Yaakov, they did. They took it upon themselves. Okay, then another commentary on Shmois chapter 22 says as follows. The verse states, if he does not have the funds to pay back that which he stole, then you sell him as a slave to the person he stole from. The Yishalim lecha es shelcha, and then he pays you that which is rightfully yours. And prior to the giving of the Torah, even if he had, if the guy who stole does have sufficient funds to pay, he still became a slave. That's going back to the brother, to Yosef and his, to telling the brothers that they said, we'll all be your slaves. Because before Matan Torah, the rule was that if someone stole, even if they have sufficient funds, they would become slaves to the person they stole from. Gabi Binyamin. Like when it comes to the case where the goblet was put in the youngest brother in Binyamin's sack, so Yosef said that he will be my slave. Even though he had plenty to pay. They had a lot of money. They had money, they could have paid. What do you mean, be a slave? Slave is only when you don't have the funds. Doesn't matter. Prior to the giving of the Torah, person steals, he has to become the slave. But we have a concept that when the Torah is given, so a new halacha was given. There's a new law. The law has been revised. The law has been changed with the giving of the Torah. And in this case, as long as you can pay, you don't have to become a slave. In other words, Originally, someone steals from someone else, they have to become that person's slave, period. Now, the Torah was given, that was modified, at least for the Jew. And now we're saying, well, not necessarily do you become a slave. If you have sufficient funds to pay up for what you stole, then you pay money and you're not a slave. And only if you don't, then we go by the original law, the pre-Torah law, which is slave. So it's explained from all of the above, this whole thing that we're bringing down over here, about the different midrashim, prior to Matan Torah, Yosef and his brothers, etc. Shematzinu, that we find, Shekoide Matan Torah, that prior to the giving of the Torah, Hayanoyeg din misa al geneva, there was, and it was applicable, and this was kept, the death penalty for stealing. Umidina malchus lokachasais eleved, and according to the government's law, the person is taken as a slave. You know, there's two levels going on over here. According to the Torah law, according to the divine law, which was not yet, the Torah wasn't given, but 7 mitzvahs were, it's a capital offense. So according to God's law, before the giving of the Torah, if one person stole something from someone else, I don't care what he has, I don't care if he can afford to pay back, for stealing, it's a death penalty. That's it. And along with that, the government and the king made laws. So according to the law of the land, what was very common was that for stealing, you become the person's slave. You're not killed. So there's two things over here. They could have killed you if they would follow the divine law of Sheva Mitzvahs, or according to the Malchus, according to the government, they weren't that strict, and instead of killing the person became a slave. But nothing to do with whether or not you had funds. There's two options here. Either kill him, and that's God's law, or the Malchus, he becomes an Eved, a slave. Even if he had enough money to pay. Now, according to the tradition that the Jewish rabbis had, the participants who were part of, accomplices who partook in the thievery, like, so to say, Yosef's brothers. So the actual thief, as the setup wasn't a thief. According to the setup, was Binyamin. And what about the rest of the brothers? They were accomplices. So Chazal, our sages of blessed memory, they have a tradition that the law was that the accomplices are thrown in prison. Imprisonment, that's the penalty. The thief himself becomes a slave. The accomplices get imprisonment. And they also knew the law of heaven. They knew what God's rule is for stealing. That you only have to pay double. That's the Jewish law after the giving of the Torah. For stealing, you pay double. And if you don't have sufficient funds to pay that amount, then you're sold as a slave. And according to the law of the land, they would take everything from the thief. Not just double. Take everything he has. So behold, we have here before us, Lehedya, clearly, explicitly, Hashkafas Chazal, the outlook of our sages, She'im haya nimtza kasuv, be'ezeh me'achukim akadmoinim, that if you're going to find written in some ancient law, like the different examples that we gave, prior to Matan Torah, more than 3,300 years ago, go back 4,000, 5,000 years ago, and you find some ancient law book, some ancient document or tablet or something, and you see there, Oisei Adin Shel Chiyuv Kefel Bad Agneva, the same ruling that the Torah gives. Torah wasn't given yet at that point. That for stealing, you have to pay double. And then if it says there, and if the person doesn't have sufficient funds, he can't afford to pay double, then he's sold as a slave. It's no surprise for us, says Rabbi Kasher. It's not a surprise. Don't say, hey, what's going on? Torah wasn't given yet. Hey, look at this. Something fishy, something scary. It's challenging. No problem. Ulahepech. On the contrary, Ishur l'divrei Chazal. This actually supports and approves the words of the rabbis. Shekvar hoya yadu libnei Yaakov sheyesh din shamayim kazeh. That the sons of Yaakov, they already knew this. They had this tradition, and they knew what the Torah law was. That if somebody steals, he pays double. And if he doesn't have sufficient funds, he's sold as a slave. They knew that. V'zeh kishitas Rav Yitzchak. And this is according to the opinion, what we mentioned towards the beginning. We had over the two opinions of what dinim, what does it mean to have laws for the Bnei Noach. This goes according to Rabbi Yitzchak. Namely, Shatzivu livnei Noach al zayin mitzvahs, the commandment for the Bnei Noach about keeping their 7 commandments, Kol aloisam adinin shnitztavu achar kach al yedei Moshe, includes in it also the later rules, the later laws that we were commanded through Moshe, through Moses. Umiloshen hamedrash hanal, and from the language of the above mentioned medrash, nire, it seems, it appears, shegam livnei Noach hayolem din malchus. The Bnei Noach also had rules of malchus. Besides having the divine laws of them all being a capital offense, they also had the governing body of the time that had its punishments. And as the Rambam rules, Shemelech Yisrael yesh lo rishus lahareg ulesaken oilam kfi ma she'ashot tzricha. A Jewish king has a right to execute, to do whatever he sees fit in order to correct and rectify the world, according to what is necessary. He has to use his better judgment and decide what's needed right now. And therefore he's allowed to execute people in a way that the Torah generally would not support. A Jewish king is allowed to do it. And in footnote 6 he brings down from the book of Shmuel Beis, where, there Nassan comes and he gives a whole hypothetical case, a parable to David HaMelech. And if a person had 1 sheep and someone stole it from him, so he said he should be put to death. And the question is, since when is stealing a sheep from a guy, even if it's his only sheep, and a poor fellow, why is that a death penalty? So the commentaries there explain that the reason why it's the death penalty is because of the law of the king. So we do find that there's such a concept. The king could decide that if you steal a sheep from a poor fellow, he loves his sheep. It's his only sheep. And you stole it, death. Even though that's not Torah law, but he has a right to do that.
A king's allowed to decide that?
Yeah. If
Jewish king or?
a Jewish king is allowed to kill as he sees necessary. He can't abuse his power, but if he feels that it's necessary, and it's happened.
Well, he decided.
Right. One of the opinions as to why David killed the Ger Amaleki fellow who came back and admitted that he had killed Shaul HaMelech, King Saul, on the battlefield. King Saul asked him to kill him, and he did. That's not allowed. And then David HaMelech killed him on his own admittance. You can't do that. Since when can you kill someone for them admitting that they committed a crime? So one of the explanations given is that he did it by rule of king, as a king, not by Jewish law as a beis din, but he did it as the king. So too, not only a Jewish king has the power to do it, with the authority of Bnei Noyach, the governing body, the king, whoever, has the permission and he's granted the authority to make rules according to what the time needs. And that was called Dine Malchus. So if they decide that for this the person is to be sold as a slave, no problem. If they decide for this the person should pay 70 times the amount, 10 times the amount, whatever, no problem. As we explained above. And according to this, so these ancient documents, if you will, that were found, even if we're going to believe and accept how old they are, which itself is probably historically debatable, and go prove that they are pre-Matan Torah. But let's even accept that they do precede the revelation at Sinai. There's absolutely no contradiction to our tradition. But on the contrary, they're actually strengthening and they are proving the truth of our tradition. Ukvar Kosav, I think it's a Ibn Ezra, and one of the commentaries writes in Shmois Yud Gimel, Ibn Ezra, the words of our tradition are strong and they don't need any strengthening. And so too it's found in the Yerushalmi Talmud, Yevamis, chapter 9, Halacha 5. And that brings us to the final part here. We're on page 224, the heading of this last piece. Mitzvahs HaTorah shenagu b'hen koydem matan Torah, the mitzvahs of the Torah which were practiced prior to the giving of the Torah. Yesh lahayir, we need to point out, take note, shemilvad hazayin mitzvahs shenitztavu b'nei Noyach, that besides for the 7 commandments that the sons of Noah were commanded, v'Yisrael bichlal, and the Jewish people are part of Bnei Noyach too. Until the giving of the Torah, the Jewish people are part of the human population, applies to them too. Hayu oid kama mitzvahs, there were more other mitzvahs besides the 7. Shenoagu b'hem koydem matan Torah, which were common practice prior to the giving of the Torah. V'haTorah ishirasam kiloshna Rambam muva lahalon, and the Torah left them, as we will explain. V'yesh kama halachos shneimru lacher matan Torah, and then there's a number of laws that were stated after the giving of the Torah. V'chazal motzu remez bepsukim shelifnei matan Torah, and our sages found hints in the verses prior to the giving of the Torah. Torah Sheleimah Perek Lamed Ches, in Rabbi Kasher's Torah Sheleimah, on chapter 38, and he says like this. He quotes himself. The Rambam writes in his Guide to the Perplexed, section 3, chapter 49. Tam hayibum, the reason for the mitzvah of yibum. And to remind everyone, that is that if a person died childless, so his widow has a mitzvah to marry the deceased's brother. One of the brothers is to marry his former sister-in-law. Says the Rambam, in Marah Nevuchim, that's where he philosophizes and explains the reasons for mitzvahs. Ki haya minhag kadum koydem matan Torah, v'ishirasei haTorah v'chulu, because there was an ancient common practice, a custom, prior to the giving of the Torah, and the Torah kept it. It didn't forbid it. It's not that the Torah made up this new thing called Yibum. No, mankind used to do that. Maybe God commanded sometime back then, but it was a common practice way before the giving of the Torah that if a man dies childless, the widow marries his brother. And now when the Torah was given to the Jewish people at Sinai, Hashem incorporated that, if you will, as one of the mitzvahs. He left it. V'chein kosav Ramban, and so too writes the Ramban Nachmanides. And the early wise men, prior to the giving of the Torah, Yoidim, they knew that there is a great benefit in doing this yibum of the brother marrying his brother's widow. They understood that there's a lot of benefit. It's a great thing to do. Okay? Uviyalkut Ksavyad Ner Hasichlim, and in a certain manuscript of a Midrash it says as follows: Reish Parshas Toldos, Chelik Bechera, Haya L'Chayk L'Rishonim. The law that the firstborn male son inherits a double portion. Right? If there is 3 sons, you divide up the estate into 4 equal parts. The eldest son gets half. Son number 2 and 3 get a quarter each. Right? The Bechor gets Pishnayim. The firstborn son inherits a double portion. Says this Midrash, that's an ancient custom. It's not, a new idea. Hey, look at that. Look what God says in the Torah for the Jewish people. Prior to the giving of the Torah, that was common practice by many nations, by many families, that the firstborn gets a double portion.
If there was 4, then he still get double.
He gets 2 quarters, which is half. No. If there's 4, so then you divide it into 5 equal parts, and the eldest one gets 2/5, and the other 3 get 1/5 each. Yeah. And so too, some of the natural things. They established as a law prior to the giving of the Torah. Now once the Torah was given, that which is truly good, Hashem said, I'm keeping it according to this situation. It was a good idea, and you guys were keeping a good thing. So Hashem says, I'm going to make it a commandment. Like these 2 examples, that the firstborn gets a double portion, and Yibum. And that which Hashem saw that is not good, even though the world was doing it as law, it was common practice, it was a conduct of the world, but if Hashem sees, no, it's not good, so then the Torah changed it, and said, no, I'm giving you the Torah law now, so Hashem changed it. Like it says, Torah was given, and the halacha, the Jewish law, was innovated. Meaning, if prior to Matan Torah, anybody who stole was sold as a slave, no questions asked. I don't care what your financial situation is, you can afford to pay, it doesn't matter. You stole, you become a slave. That was what they did, and Hashem said, no, that's not going to continue. Double portion for the firstborn, that continues. Marriage of Yibum, that continues. Being sold as a slave for merely stealing, no, that doesn't continue. There's such a concept if you can't afford to pay. But just to say you, so there was some modification. Urei Torah Sheleimah Bereishis Perek Lamed Aleph Pei Beis V'Shakos Mitisefta Atikta V'Ramban Sham. And then he again tells us to look up in his Torah Sheleimah on Bereishis chapter 31 from earlier sources that says as follows. Derech Nashim Li. When Rachel, who took the idols of her father, so do you recall where she hid them?
By camel?
In the camel's, what do they call in English? Like a pillow of some sort,
Saddle.
a saddle of the camels, and she was sitting on it. Now what happened? Her father comes into the tent, and she says to her father, please excuse me for not standing up. But she says, Derech Nashim Li, the way of women is for me. Meaning she just got her menstrual cycle. That's what she tells her father. So forgive me, Dad, I can't get up. So it brings down from these early sources, Ki hanidus b'mei hakadmeinim meruchakos ma'od chulu, that a woman who was in her state, which by Jewish law is known as a nida, that's a woman when she is impure by Torah law because she's having her menstrual bleeding. Back in ancient times, prior to the giving of the Torah, a woman in that state, at that time of her month, was considered pushed away. Miruchakos ma'od, very much disassociated. So it's not just a Torah law. And when we're giving this example, it's pretty. It's a pretty big novelty, or whatever the word is. No, novel.
Novelty?
No, but there's a correct way to say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever. Why? Because the other ones are not necessarily chukim. They make sense. The firstborn to get adult portion, you can make sense on that. Yibum, you can explain that there's, make sense. This, all the laws of purity and impurity fall into the category of a choik. Those mitzvahs that are irrational. And that's nida. And yet we're saying over here, no. Prior to the giving of the Torah, by the non-Jewish world, it was very much distanced. From a woman was very distanced. That's why when she tells her father, it's like, what does Lavan care about nida? What does Lavan have to do with that? It wasn't just physically, she said, I'm not comfortable getting up now or something. It's because she was in a state of nida. She was basically telling her father, sorry. I said, okay, I'm getting out of here. That's what happened. Ayin Sham. He tells, take a look over there in the Torah Sheleimah, what he explains there. Furthermore, Uva Ramban Parshas Vayetze. And in the commentary of Nachmanides, the Ramban, in the Torah portion in Bereshis of Vayetze, says as follows: Kishiva Sinei Mishte Takonas Moshe Rabbeinu LiYisrael. Again, going back to the story of Yaakov marrying the two sisters. So Lavan tricked him, and instead of giving him Rachel, who he wanted to marry, gave him Leah. Okay, and then when he discovers that, he says, you tricked me, it's not fair. So he says, no problem. Lavan tells him, finish the week of marriage, and then I trust you. I'll give you the other sister, and then you'll just have to work for me again for some years, just like you did for this one. The week of marriage? What's that? Sheva brachas. Who instituted a week of Sheva brachas? 1 week of festivities that the bridegroom have to be together, and people get together, and they celebrate the marriage for a full week. Where did that come from? Moshe Rabbeinu instituted that. This is prior to Moshe Rabbeinu. This is pre-Torah. This is going back to Lavan telling Yaakov. And perhaps Moshe Rabbeinu didn't innovate this out of the clear blue. Maybe the nations of the world had this common custom. It was a common practice that when a couple got married, for the next week, 7 days, there was festivities and celebrating this newlywed, the institution of marriage. And Moshe Rabbeinu incorporated for the Jewish people. He said, that's a good custom. Let's make it for the Jews. Maybe that's what happened.
Was this the first time you saw?
The first time we know of was Lavan saying to, but the question is, where did Lavan come from? And we always attribute it to Moshe making it. It's not even Midah Yeraisa. It's not a biblical mitzvah. It's a Rabbanon. It's rabbinic. Which Rabbanan? Moshe Rabbeinu. He's a good rabbi. But it starts with him. They're saying, no. It's pre that. He's the one who instituted it for the Jews. It came from the nations of the world. And it wasn't even Lavan. We're not giving him the credit. He didn't make it up. Like when you read the Psukim in Vayetze, it sounds like it's the common thing. Well, finish the Sheva Brachas with the first wife, and then we'll let you marry the second sister. Ki'inyan ba'avelus, similar to mourning. It says that he made for his father a mourning period of 7 days. And that's prior to the giving of the Torah. And again, Moshe Rabbeinu is the one we say instituted 7 days of Shiva. That if someone passes away, there's a week of mourning. Moshe Rabbeinu made that up as well. Say, made it up? He instituted it for the Jewish people. But it was an ancient custom amongst the people of the world. And again in Torah Sheleimah, chapter 31, it says as follows. Masha Omar Yaakov, that which Yaakov said, V'sheish shanim b'tzoincha kedin eved ivri. Yaakov said, I've worked for your sheep for 6 years. I worked for you for 6 years. That's what Yaakov says to Lavan. What's the point there? 6 years. That's an eved ivri. That's a Jew who's owned by another Jew as a slave. He works for 6 years, then he goes free. But the Torah wasn't given yet. And Yaakov yet is considering himself as an Eved Ivri to Lavan. This is all prior to the Torah. Bikra Shmois Chafes Tezayin. And if you want a proof from the scripture itself, what does the pasuk say? In Shmois 22, Parshas Mishpatim, Kemoihar habesulois, like that which is given to the virgins. We're talking over there about a ksuba, about a contract. How much money does a person who's marrying a virgin obligate himself to give her if he dies or if he divorces her? The pasuk says Kemoihar habesulois. Uba Mechilta, and the Mechilta on that verse explains, Vein Moyar el Ksuba. And the word Moihar means the Ksuba, the marriage contract. Shenemar, Gabe Shechem, because it says, going back to Bereshis 34, when Shechem kidnapped Dinah and raped her, and then the brothers wanted to take her back, and they tricked all the people of Shechem, right? They told them, circumcise yourselves, and they went out on the third day and they killed them all. What does it say over there? Harbu alai ma'oid. Shechem says, make a very, very high price. Moihar umaton v'goymer. He uses the word moihar. What is he talking about? He's talking about the ksuba. Shechem, he's not Jewish. What ksuba? Ksuba is a rabbinic thing. It was made up by the Chachamim many generations later. So you know, saying no. They instituted, they made it the mandatory that Jews have to keep it. But the custom existed beforehand. The nations of the world had such a contract. When you marry someone, you make a contract and you say that if I die first, you get the money. And if I divorce you, I'm going to give you money. It's a ksuba called moihar. V'ayin tergumim v'ramban sham. Umevuar she'etzem aminak shel moyar haya kvar mikoydem v'atera rimza olav. So what comes out over here is that the custom of a kesuba existed beforehand, prior to Matan Torah, and the Torah actually hints to it by saying over here by Shechem or in Parshas Mishpatim where it says Kemoihar habesulois. V'ayin Torah Sheleimah Bereshis Perek Yud Zayin Nun Aleph V'Sham Perek Lamed Aleph Lamed Aleph. B'mikra, another proof from a pasuk. Ha'oid lanu chelik v'nachala. When Yaakov calls over his wives, Rachel and Leah, to the field, and he says, I'm planning on running away. You with me or not? I want to escape. I want to get away from your father because I have to leave. And what did they respond to him? Do we have any share? Do we have any hope to inherit anything from our father that we should stick around? Why? Because the girls, the daughters, don't get anything of the inheritance when there are sons. And we know he had sons, as the verse says, that the sons of Lavan got upset, and it says clearly he had sons. So Lavan had sons, so what do his daughters say? We have no hope in inheriting anything. But that's a Torah law. Who says that the non-Jews, the daughters don't inherit? So we apparently see from here that going back then, it was common practice, common law, that the sons inherited and not the girls, just like the Torah law. V'sham lamed aleph tazayin, lo nuhu levanenu, v'kan l'ksubas b'nin dichrin.
It seems with a lot of these examples where we're seeing where the Jewish dinim was used by the nations.
That's exactly his point, even though the Torah was not yet given. So now he's giving it a very interesting spin. He's saying that they were common practice, and they were dinim that the nations of the world were doing, however they started. And now the giving of the Torah, many of them, not all, he gave an example of one that was changed or modified, but many of them, Hashem then commands the Jewish people. But it's not like we're coming out of nothing. Torah is just making up all these laws. What do you mean the world existed for a couple thousand years? What was total chaos? I mean, do they have laws? Do they have practices? Yes, absolutely. And many of them then became Torah. It's a very interesting approach.
So why wouldn't the nations be able to just look at the Mishpatim and say, okay, we're going to take that?
Because much of it was changed. In other words, the nations used to have double, 7 times, 10 times, 15 times, 30 times. That was all changed. We have double it. So the nations, they don't have to change. They don't have to conform to that. There's no need. The whole point is, Hashem says, no, I want you to go according to your logic. And if it's and it changes from time to time. See here, the verse says that Rachel and Leah said to Yaakov, but all the wealth that Hashem has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. And they said actually to our sons. And from there we see the concept of the sons inheriting in the ksuba. That a woman's ksuba, her sons get. So here we have it, because they said, Lanu ulevanenu, it's ours and our sons. Visham perek mem zayin samechei. And then we have another thing. What does it say? When Asatim chamishis lefaroi. When Yosef made a tax on all the Egyptians, he tells them they have to give 1/5 of all their land, of everything. They have to give 1/5 to Paroi, to the king. What's that? So it says like this. Why did Yosef do that? He was preparing the way for the future. He doesn't want the Jewish people to feel bad and gypped and stingy, because if you work out the calculation, in the future, when the Jewish people are going to be commanded about the tithes that they have to give, various different donations of your own produce, you have to give away. It comes out that between the Trumas and the Maisris, you end up giving away 1/5. You have to bring it to Yerushalayim and give it away. So Jesus says, yeah. Don't feel bad. Watch. All the Egyptians have to give 1/5 to the king. And that was established back then. The Torah wasn't given for another few hundred years. So therefore, the Jews won't feel so uptight about this difficult mitzvah of giving away my produce. What do you mean? This is how we were brought up. You've been living in Mitzrayim like that, and all the Egyptians do the same. They don't give it to the Kohen, they don't give it to Hashem. Okay, but you give away as a tax, a fifth of your property. And he says there are many more such examples. This was a long list. He says it goes on and on. And in Bereshis, chapter 26, verse 5, it says that I'm going to make the seed of Avraham so many, and I'm going to bless him amongst all the nations of the world. Why? Akev, because Avraham obeyed my voice and observed my safeguards, my commandments, my decrees, and my Torahs. Mitzvoisai, my commandments, chukoisai, v'goymer, etc. And it's brought down in one medrash, Elu Zayin mitzvahs. This refers to the 7 mitzvahs. Because Avram kept the 7 mitzvahs, therefore. Uvrashbam, and in the commentary of the Rashbam, Lefi ikar pshutei kol ha-mitzvahs hanikares, klema mefurashos. Meaning, all, according to the simple reading, Avram kept all of the obvious mitzvahs, all the explicit ones. Kegoin gezel varayes v'chimud v'dinin v'achnosas orchim. For example, not to steal, not to commit any type of incest, adultery, not to covet, to establish a court system, and to be hospitable. Kulam hayonoyagin kedem matan Torah. All those were done before the giving of the Torah. All those mitzvahs were kept before the Torah was given. Ella, but what? Shenischatshu v'nisparshu liYisrael v'karsu bris l'kaimon atkan. The only difference is they were reinstated, they were explicitly commanded to the Jewish people, and the Jewish people made a covenant to keep them. Instead of just saying, oh, it's a nice thing, or it's custom, or it's the way of the world, or no. We're going to make a covenant now. You're going to keep it. That's what happened with Matan Torah. But it wasn't like we never heard of these things before. Same thing we find all the way back there, that Avraham gave Malkitzedek Melech Shalem 1/10 of everything. It says, Vayiten le'maser mikoil. He tithed his stuff. Right? Yudalid Chav. Chapter 14. Avram gave him 1/10. That's Meiser. Uv'migdal lois barambam perik tes min melachim halach aleph. And one of the commentaries on the Rambam, chapter 9, law 1 in the Laws of Kings. Yesh oimer, that there's someone who says, Mimei kedem hayu mafrishin v'toilin hadavar ba'Avraham. That the idea of tithing, this was an ancient custom that people did, and they say it goes back to Avraham. Tichsiv, because this verse says, Vayiten le'maser mikoil, that Avraham gave Malkitzedek 1/10 of everything. Torah Sheleimah shamayis lakuvlan beis mashakasuv misefer hayoivlim. And he says, take a look at Torah Sheleimah, what he brings out from another book. V're'ei b'toisvus chulin samech aleph dibur maskal kol. Now he says, take a look in Toisvus, in the commentary of the Toisvus on Tractate of Chulin 61a, and we quote the Toisvus. V'im toimar, and if you're going to say, you have a question. V'achikim lehu l'rabanan hachmilsa v'chi knigi oy belisteri havu shebadku kol oifes tohirim v'in shum oif doireis ha'amar lekaman samach gimel the oifes tohirim ein mispar chuli. He says, how do you know which birds are kosher and which birds are not. The birds don't really have any sign. The animals, we know they have to chew their cud, split hooves, but the birds don't really have a sign. How do you know which ones are kosher, which ones are not? So there's a list in the Torah of the ones that are not. And if it's not on the list, then it's kosher. So you say, wait a second. But in order for a bird or an animal to be kosher, it can't be a toiref. It can't be one that attacks another animal with its claws. So how do the Chachamim know that there's no bird that is like that? And the Gemara, the Taisus quotes a later Gemara that says that the number of kosher birds is no number. It's like an infinite amount. The Yesh Loimar Taisus answers there. The Shema, perhaps Kabbalah Haisa B'Yadam Imais Noyach. Maybe they had a tradition going back to the days of Noyach. Sheikriv Mikol Oiv Tahar. Noyach, after all, remember, he took 7 of all the kosher animals. He only took 2 of non-kosher. But of all the kosher species, he took 7. Okay, that includes fowl. So he brought sacrifices of every kosher type of a bird. Ubadakes kulam, and he checked all of them. Umasar la doires, and therefore he gave it over to the next generations. Shein noivtar doires, that a kosher bird does not kill in such a manner. It does not get in with its claws into anybody. He checked it out. So maybe that's how the Chachamim knew, because we have a tradition going back to Noach. Vayin belavusha oira, parshas vayeshiv, the kodim matan teira, hutur l'chol oilam atoiris, b'shchita kodim shetomus. That prior to Matan Torah, the whole world was allowed to eat the kosher types if they slaughtered it before it died. Vayin Torah Sheleimah Bereshis Perek Zayin Yud Gimel Shelamad Noach Torah. Okay, Torah Sheleimah, he brings down over there that Noach learned Torah. Over Ramban Sham Shakadosh Baruch Hu Piresh Lo Simoni Tara. In other words, the question becomes, how did Noach know which animals to take 7? Hashem said, from the ones which are pure, take 7. Torah wasn't given yet. What kind of instruction is that? So one interpretation is that Noach learned Torah. Torah wasn't given yet. He had the Torah. Another explanation, the Raman's explanation, is that Hashem told him the signs of a Tahira, and therefore he checked each animal and he knew which ones he had to bring 7. Then we find Hoitziuha v'sisaref. Yehuda said to take Tamar and she should be burned to death. V'al derech hapshat yitochin shehaya mishpatom kanog hayoim b'miktzas arotzes sfarad sheisha asher tizne tachas isha mois nois lebayla v'uda nois lemisa elechaim kirtzoynoi. Very interesting suggestion here. He's suggesting that maybe what happened is as follows. See, Yehuda, if you remember the story, had a daughter-in-law. And Yehuda's son died. So they did Yibum, and she married the second son. Second son died as well. And Yehuda did not want her to marry the third son. He sent her away, and he says, don't call us, we'll call you. In the meantime, Yehuda's wife died. Then Yehuda goes there with his friend, and she disguised herself, and Yehuda met up with her and had relations. She conceived. And Yehuda had no idea who this lady was. He went back home, and then they told him, your daughter-in-law, Tamar, is pregnant. And he said, take her and burn her to death. So where'd that come from? What happened there? So he says, because maybe in ancient times, back then, prior to the giving of the Torah, as is the custom nowadays in some lands. I think this is what the Ramban is saying, I think, in certain countries, all right, like Spain or whatever, that if a woman commits adultery, a married woman, what do? What's the law? You give her to her husband and let him judge her, whether he wants her to be put to death or whether he wants her to live. His choice. Now, this Tamar, she was sort of married because she was supposed to get married to the third son. So she was she wasn't allowed to marry anyone else, let's put it that way. And even though by Torah law she wasn't married to him, just because she has to marry him doesn't mean, if a woman whose husband died childless and she has to marry one of the brothers, but if in the meantime she married someone else or she had relations with someone else, that's not a capital offense. She's just supposed to marry that guy, but she didn't marry him. But in those days, it's possible that their common practice, their laws were that if a woman is in a state where she's supposed to have yibum, then she's considered a married woman. And that's why she was considered married to Shelah, the third son of Yehuda. And therefore the law is that the husband, which in this case would be her father-in-law because he was like the one who was supposed to marry her off to Shelah, he gets to choose what should happen to her. Should she die or should she live? And he said she should be burned to death. Wow. And in fact, it says that is what's explained in one of those ancient law books that we spoke about, that is the rule, that if a woman, a married woman, commits adultery, then in the ancient times, the rule was the husband gets to choose what to do. Uve Sanhedrin Memvav, and in Sanhedrin 46b. Amar le Shvur Malka. Amar le Shvur Malka le Rav Chama. There was this king of Persia at the time who had a lot of exchange and interaction with the rabbis. A lot of stories about him. So he said to Rav Chama, Kvura min atera minayin. From where do we know that burial is biblical? Who says you're supposed to bury the dead? Where do we say that in the Torah? Ishtik v'loy omar midei. He kept quiet. He didn't respond. No answer. V'neima. So why don't we say, the Gemara asks, Midi ikbar tzadike, from the fact that tzadikim were buried. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So you say, Minhaga B'alma, that was just a custom. Shnago kin kodim l'chein, that they did beforehand. That doesn't prove that it's a biblical obligation to bury the dead. V'neimas, let's say, Midakavna Kodesh Baruch Hu Moshe, because Hashem buried Moshe. That's what it says in the Chumash. Alma daite skima. In other words, Hashem agrees with this old ancient thing. Yes, the first one to be buried was not Moshe Rabbeinu. But the fact that Hashem buried Moshe shows that this ancient tradition of mankind to bury the dead, Hashem agrees with that. Yeah, take the dead and put it.
During the 40 years, didn't they, isn't there,
So that's not written in the Torah.
that's not
No, that's midrash.
rational.
Deloy lishtenei minhaga, not to change the custom. Dilma ki heichi deloy lishtenei Moshe minhaga dalma. So we're saying, no, that doesn't prove that it's biblical just because Hashem buried Moshe. Maybe Hashem didn't want to change the common custom, and therefore, since it's so common, people buried people. So Hashem said, "Okay, I'm going to bury Moshe." But where do we find that there's an obligation? Uverach the kaimelon mitzvah zumid rabbanon. So there are those that say that this mitzvah of bearing is rabbinic. V'zu shita chadash al yuskor rabbi rishonim re'ei lachamishna perik yud beis ilchas evel alach aleph the leika damri remez lekvur min atayru rak mit rabbanon. Yet there are those that say that the hints in the Torah for burial, it's rabbinic. V'shalas l'tshuvas chavas yor siman kuf lamates v'rema shekosam Torah Sheleimah b'reishis pei gimel kuf samachalef mavur mizeh sha'af pi shekosam b'Torah dvarim lamadal dvav v'yikbar yisei bagay v'gomer. So it comes out that even though it says explicitly at the end of the Chumash that Hashem buried Moshe, and it says where? Ein lilmig mizeh sheyesh kan mitzvah chiyuvis mid'oraisa likbar. You can't learn from there that there's a biblical obligation for people to bury the dead, for the Jews to bury the dead. For it's possible, maybe it was just a custom that was done before the Torah was given, and Hashem did the same to Moshe, but it doesn't say you have to do it. Anan me Avram nikum v'nigmor. Ve'in lo nilmod minog anavim, elo kegoin Daniel v'chaytze boi mipnei shenagu ka'alacha l'Moshe b'Sinai hachrish nitnu Torah. Yeah, so then he brings down, one of the commentaries says, that we actually learn out from Avraham. Because remember, Avraham wanted to bury Sarah. And he bought the Marah Machpelah. He bought a plot to bury her. So Avram is the one who went ahead and buried Sarah. So from that we can learn out. U'mashakas v'Torah Sheleimah b'midluim l'parshas Vaychi Amud Taf Taf Kuf. U'b'ksuvas Yud, and in tractate Ksubas 10b, Almana d'chsiva b'iraisa, that a widow, which is mentioned, written in the Torah, v'adayin lo niskinu ksubais, and yet there was no institution of writing a ksuba yet. Ma'ikal Meimer, what are you going to say? Ayin shom b'teisut v'maschil almona uvaflo shekosav shemigemara sanhedrin hanal ra'il mashekosav Rashi daf tekos v'atera Hashem kefi aminog afilu achi eino midiraisa. So even if it's mentioned in the Torah, it doesn't make it biblical. Because all it means is that people did it, the Torah is making mention of it, but it's not obligating us to do it. So it's not a mitzvah midiraisa. It could be a rabbanon. So what do you mean? Torah talks about it. So what? Torah talks about it because it was done. But it's not obligating you to do it. Later on, they'll come and obligate you. Like a ksuba. Torah, we says before, kim mayar abisulois. We find that in the Torah there's a concept of a ksuba, and yet we say it's biblical. It was instituted by the rabbis. Yeah, because it used to exist by the nations of the world way before the giving of the Torah. In the Torah it speaks about it. But when did it become an obligation for a Jew? That's later.
So why would it mention it if it wasn't an obligation?
A lot of things are just hinted to. Not as a chiyuv. Like all the things that it says in all those cases with Yosef and his brothers and all that about killing and about selling. We don't follow those laws, but yet it's telling us. וכן מדייק ממש פירוש רש"י במגילה כ"ב עין שם. ובתורה שלמה משפטים פרק כ"א ריש ו' הבייסים אשר כוסף הגוררי לתרץ קושיית הרמב"ן על רש"י שפירש שאירה וגמר לא יגרע היינו מזוינס. אף על פי שההלכה שמזוינס מדרבנן. Okay, there's another question. The verse says that a man is obligated to give his wife three things. She'era ksusa v'inasa. She'era means food. Question is, for a man to have to support his wife financially and feed her is rabbinic. If it's rabbinic, there's a verse that says clearly he must give her she'era. So what do you mean it's rabbinic? So we say the way I have to read the pasuk is it's not a commandment. The simple reading of the pasuk is it's stating a fact that this is what men do for their wives. It's not obligating you. Later on, the rabbis come along and say it's an obligation, you have to. But you say, wait a minute, the pasuk says so. The pasuk is stating it in a matter-of-fact way, not in a commandment. Atkan. In the Gemara, there actually is one opinion that says that supporting a woman financially, supporting one's wife financially is biblical. But that goes according to a single opinion. But really, most opinions hold that the reading of that pasuk is not halachic, it's not as a mitzvah, but rather it is stating it as a fact. And likewise, Taisvus writes in Gittin 47b. And we say in the beginning of tractate Kiddushin as follows: same thing. That it says that Hashem writes in the Torah that whatever a woman does, whatever she earns, whatever a girl does goes to her father. Why? Because she's being supported by him. But wait a second. Biblically, a father is not obligated to support his daughter. So why do you say that biblically whatever a daughter does goes to her father, and that's because he supports her? Wait, are you talking on a biblical level? He's not obligated to support her. So we're saying the same thing. We're talking about what's common practice. He does support her. Therefore, whatever she has goes to him. And in my commentary on the Torah Sheleimah, in the book of Bereshis and Shmois, there are many, many more examples of this, and this is not the place to elaborate. He's only been going on and on and on. And with that, we conclude this essay, this article, in the Miluyim to volume 17 of the Torah Sheleimah, where Rabbi Kasher, in a most brilliant way, explains the mitzvah of dinim, or this last piece that we explain now, how he tells us that many of the things that the nations of the world do are things that they've been doing way back, since before the giving of the Torah, and they were their common practices, and they had to follow them as part of dinim, because that's just what was done, what they decided to do. Comes the Torah, and the Torah is now given for the Jews, and only for the Jews to follow these civil laws, and many of them are the same and identical to what all of mankind has been doing from way back, even though they don't technically fall into the category of the seven, and many of them are different. So for the Jew, now we have the Torah, and now you don't have to go to ancient history, and you don't follow what people used to do. It's irrelevant. Now the Jew has to follow what the Torah says. Whereas for the non-Jew, he has to follow what the common law is, the current law in the place where he lives, in the time that he lives in. That's what he's supposed to follow, so long as it does not